Very good morning, friends, and welcome to another Wisdom Wednesday with me, Rocky Stevenson, pastor of Benoni Bible Church. Can you believe it? Wednesday, the 17th of July. We're going to be exploring Ecclesiastes Chapter 8. And I do want to say that many a times when you're looking at the book of Ecclesiastes, it's actually helpful to view it, the whole book together, because you find the conclusion of the book being something that is most special, because he says, well, I've considered everything, and actually all you need to do, the whole duty of man, is to fear God and to enjoy Him forever. And, if you lose sight of that end result, then you can be moved toward despair, even as you go through the book of Ecclesiastes. But let's look a little bit more in depth today at Ecclesiastes chapter 8. As we look at this once more, Ecclesiastes, remember, is a book that offers deep insight into the human condition, as well as the nature of life underneath the sun. And chapter 8 is no exception. It delves into themes of wisdom, authority, justice, and the mystery of life, providing timeless lessons even for us as we look at this. In verse 1 to 4 of Ecclesiastes 8, and we need to remember that the rest of Ecclesiastes 8 also shows us what it's like when there is evil authority as well. But here's a word of wisdom to even the Christian, as we are underneath sometimes a wicked government, and that doesn't obey the Lord, does not look to the Lord, and often oversteps its bounds. But listen to Ecclesiastes 8, verse 1 to 4. It says, "Who is like the wise man, and who knows the interpretation of a matter? A man's wisdom illuminates his face, and causes his stern face to beam." And I couldn't help but think about a friend of mine, a pastor friend of mine down in the Cape, Pastor Cyril. And he's in an area where there's been a lot of gangsterism and drugs and etc., and this man's face is a really stern face, but his face beams with wisdom. And so that's my friend down in the Cape. And it says, "I say, keep the command of the king because of the oath before God. Do not be in a hurry to leave him. Do not join in an evil matter, for he will do whatever he pleases. Since the word of the king is powerful, who will say to him, 'What are you doing?'" Now this is giving us insight into even how we ought to operate many a times underneath the governing authority that we have, because no authority exists apart from God. And there's times where there's legitimate authority and then there's illegitimate authority, and we can see that in Romans 13. Legitimate authority upholds that which is good and punishes that which is evil. Illegitimate authority punishes that which is good and upholds that which is evil. But these verses really highlight the benefit of wisdom, and wisdom enlightens and transforms a person's demeanor. Even if they have a stern face because of this world that they're living in that is quite harsh, their face beams because of being wise. And the wise person understands the complexities of life and also then navigates them with grace, and that's part of the point. Additionally, these verses then emphasize the importance of respecting authority, because when you think particularly of the king's command in this time, you had the king, and Solomon was writing the book of Ecclesiastes, and he knew that he's been given authority from God. Those that actually stand against this authority actually will not land up in a good place. And little did he know that just after his death, and I think the Lord actually made it pretty plain to him because of the way that his heart was divided towards the end of his life, that God would actually divide the kingdom of Israel. And his son Rehoboam would ascend to his throne, but then one of his commanders, Jeroboam, would actually split the kingdom away from Rehoboam. But did it go well with Jeroboam? Did it go well with those that were the kings of the north? It didn't go well, even though the kings in the south were wicked, and even though, many of them were wicked, most of them were going away from the Lord and following idolatrous practices and filled with immorality, and yet God preserved the line of David for the Christ, and our Lord Jesus came as the fulfillment of the Davidic covenant in that regard. And so there is this element where there's this deeper reality of what Solomon is saying regarding the king and his command, and not actually joining yourself with those that would be anarchists or those that would be against the authority that is set up. And there's wisdom even in the way that we need to think through how do we as the church in our day live as the church, live as light and as salt, even within a world that is very wicked and within a country that is very wicked. And if we're not thinking that our country is very wicked, then we just need to open our eyes and open our ears We live in an incredibly wicked country, and we can see evil all around us as a result of those that have rejected God's ways. But Romans 13:1 says every person is to be subject to the governing authorities, for there is no authority except from God, and those who exist are established by God. And so sometimes we have authorities over us that is as a result of the wickedness within the nation and part of God's judgment even upon the nation. Yet God is merciful, and He restrains through the restraint of the Holy Spirit, and the church is such a hope even in the land like ours in South Africa. And then we think of the limits of human authority in verse 5 to 8 of Ecclesiastes 8. It says, "He who keeps a royal command experiences no trouble, for a wise heart knows the proper time and prudence. For there is a proper time and procedure for every delight, though a man's trouble is heavy upon him. If no one knows what will happen, who can tell him what or when it will happen? No man has authority to restrain the wind with the wind, or authority over the day or death, or the day of death, and there is no discharge in the time of war, and evil will not deliver those who practice it." So this is partly a balance even with what he says, because he knows that even those that think that they are in authority, there's certain things they don't have authority over, like the day of death. They don't have full authority over many things. They can't restrain the wind with the wind. They're not God. So there's a limitation to human authority. Even those that are placed in high positions of authority, like a king or like those within government. And so these verses remind us of the limitations of human authority as well as of knowledge. Because despite our best efforts, we cannot control many aspects of life. And that's sometimes what human authority tries to do. They try to control many aspects of life that are actually not underneath their governance or under their control. There's a limitation that God has given even to the authorities in a country like South Africa. And many a times they might not recognize it, but God recognizes this, and God is God, and they are not. So such as even the timing of events or the inevitability of death, these are things that our government cannot control. Now, this echoes the New Testament teaching even of human limitation and God's sovereignty in James 4, verse 14 to 15, where it says, "Yet you do not know what your life will be like tomorrow. You are just a vapor that appears for a little while and then vanishes away. Instead, you ought to say, if the Lord wills, we will live and also do this or that." So it's if the Lord wills. This is the right kind of an attitude that even the Christian ought to adopt. I do what I do if the Lord wills, and I live as the Lord wills, and I'm submitted underneath Him, and I honor Him, and I'm wise, and we need to be wise, even as the church in our day, regarding sometimes the wicked government that we are under. We need to recognize that there are certain things that we cannot control, there are certain things that we can, but we should focus on our own homes, on our own lives, on our own husbanding, on our own wifing, on our own parenting. These are things that are underneath our direct control. There are things that you can control, there's things that you cannot control. It's the things that you can control that you will be held accountable for. And this is something that is only the wise really are able to look at this. Many a times people will be crippled by the things that they cannot control, and then they don't even actually control the things that they should and the things that they can control. Or they use an excuse where they say, well, these things are so wicked in the world that I'm in or the government that I have, so therefore I can be wicked in my behavior as well. And this, now they might not articulate that with their words, but this is often how many people live. You might have a husband not treating his wife fairly because he lives in a government that's not fair, or he lives underneath a boss that's not fair. And how wicked is that? What you must do is honor the Lord in your own way, in your own home, in your own life, and do that which the Lord has put before you. And this is the principle even of stewardship, because as you steward these things faithfully, so it is that the Lord gives you more to steward. And so be faithful in your own home, in your own life. And it may be that the Lord raises you up into other areas of life where you can have an influence on other people that are around you. We then see the injustice of life in verse 9 to 13 of Ecclesiastes 8, saying this, "All this I have seen and given my heart to every work that has been done under the sun, wherein a man has exercised authority over another man to his hurt." And this is sad. This is part of what he's actually recognizing, because remember, he's looked a little bit earlier on verse 1 to 4 at the authority even of a king. He says, but there's an exercising of authority over another one to his hurt. So then I have seen the wicked buried, those who used to go in and out from the holy place, and they are soon forgotten in the city where they did thus. This too is vanity, because the sentence against an evil deed is not executed quickly. Therefore the hearts of the sons of men among them are given fully to do evil. And there we see the way that the consequence of sin ought to be carried out quickly. The judgment for an evil deed ought to be quickly executed, because when it is not, and when justice is not done, then the hearts of the sons of men that are among these ones that are not justly dealt with actually are given fully over to do evil. And that's why we see, even in a country like ours, such broad sin. And I mean, we're one of the murder capitals of the world, one of the rape capitals of the world. We see such wickedness that is done because many a times the evil deeds that are done are not executed quickly. And then he says, although a sinner does evil 100 times and may lengthen his life, still I know that it will be well with those who fear God, who fear him openly. That is the remark that is made then by the preacher. Those that fear the Lord, it will actually go well with them. You might look at the wicked world around you, and you might even think to yourself, but wicked men are getting away with their wicked deeds. Even our wicked government is getting away with their wicked deeds. We have billionaires sometimes that are holding public office, and they are using their position to get their family more rich and to get people around them more rich. And it's how quickly can we steal? And the greatest criminals are sometimes put into public office. And we might look at this and we might scratch our head, but the reality is, dear ones, according to all of the scriptures and according to the reality of the fact that everyone will answer before God, those that do well and fear the Lord, those are the ones that will actually be well in the end, because God holds justice in his hands. And then verse 13 of chapter 8 says, but it will not be well for the evil man, that he will not lengthen his days like a shadow, because he does not fear God. What a picturesque ending there in verse 13. And so these verses then grapple with the reality of injustice. Then the preacher observes the wickedness that often goes unpunished, and evil people may even prosper. However, he concludes with a profound truth: it will ultimately be well for those who fear the Lord. And so this is where we're going to end today, because we are running a little bit out of time. But let me close with reading Ecclesiastes 8:14-17, which says, there is futility which is done on the earth, that is, that there are righteous men to whom it happens according to the deeds of the wicked. On the other hand, there are evil men to whom it happens according to the deeds of the righteous. I say that this too is futility, so I commend pleasure. For there is nothing good for a man under the sun, except to eat and drink and to be merry. And this will stand by him in the labor throughout the days of his life, which God has given to him under the sun. When I gave my heart to know wisdom, and to seek and to see that the task which has been done on the earth, even though one should never sleep day or night, and I saw every work of God, I concluded that man cannot discover the work which has been done under the sun. Even though man should seek laboriously, he will not discover, and though the wise man should say, I know, he cannot discover. And so, in the end, fear God and keep his commandments. This is the major purpose that we find throughout the book of Ecclesiastes. It's those that fear the Lord that actually will see length of days in the end. Amen.